Then we all have to check. Got it. All right. Um, okay, so welcome back. And please make a show. I'll say the verse. May the sacred presence of him who said he would abide in his teaching be our guide. May we follow his glorious example and tread with unfaltering step this noble path until we too shall attain enlightenment. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prashna paramita. So, my talk this evening is about obstacles, specifically obstacles when we engage the practice of metta, of opening the heart, opening to unconditional love and the challenges. And I'm looking around, and all of you are familiar with this metta practice. So I may modify my talk a little bit, but really what I wanted to do is talk about this practice of metta that many of us have been engaging with regularly on Monday evenings, and acknowledge that it's not a straight line metta practice. And honestly, perhaps a better title for this talk would be obstacles in general, because some of the things that I'd love to bring up and talk about are obstacles to our zazen practice as well. So when we do practice on Monday evenings, we really don't have much of a chance to check in about how it's going or where the difficulties lie. And just like in our zazen practice, I know when I started practicing initially and would sit in the zendo with a group of people and looked at all the Buddhas next to me, I thought, everybody's got this figured out but me. Everybody knows what's going on. Or maybe a less judgmental way, I would just be like, what are they doing? What are they doing? I'm not sure what's going on for them, and being curious. And so I thought I would just talk about some of the obstacles that come up in metta practice, and how, there's that cliche in practice, like it goes a couple ways, like the obstacles are the path, or the path is the practice. So the obstacles actually are tremendous teachers. They really reflect back to us something important in many cases, not always, but in many cases it is something that is helpful to know and to explore and be with. So I wanted to talk about those things, and also it's interesting because most of you know so much about metta practice, but maybe just give a little tiny bit of context for metta practice, because we don't revisit that, where it comes from, just a little bit of context and description of it. And then we might do a short practice to perhaps get you in touch with your obstacles directly, the lived experience, and then come back and then talk about some of the things that come up for each of us in this offering. So I hope for this to be for there to be time for discussion when we talk about this. So I'm going to just give a little bit of a description of it and a little bit of context, and then we'll do a practice. So one thing that can be helpful to know is that metta practice is honestly has not been a traditional part of Soto Zen practice. Our main practice in our lineage tradition is shikantaza, themeless meditation. So resting in awareness itself and seeing what happens there. So metta practice, which is a guided practice, has a different emphasis and feel, but it's becoming much more practiced in Zen centers more and more, where it wasn't a few years back. But just to know, it's a little outside of our lineage tradition. It's more commonly associated with Vipassana practice, insight meditation practices, and comes out of the Theravadan tradition in the Pali Canon. So that just gives you a little bit of like where it falls within the tradition of practices. Also a reminder that metta practice, loving kindness practice, is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. So the Brahma Viharas are described again in the Pali Canon, and Brahma Vihara refers to 4 heavenly abodes or 4 divine abodes. And Brahman, in the Brahma part of that word, refers to someone or something that is heavenly or divine. And Vihara means abode or dwelling place. So this becomes translated as the 4 divine abodes or the 4 immeasurables. And metta itself is translated, let me back up. So what are the other 3? We're going to focus on loving kindness, metta, as the practice that we're going to focus on this evening and have been focusing on. But the others, just so you know, are compassion, karuna, translated as karuna, mudita, which is translated as sympathetic joy or also appreciative joy. And then the final one is upekkha, which is equanimity. So all of these are referring to qualities of mind, states of mind that we can incline ourselves to, that we actually can cultivate and nurture and is part of our truest, deepest nature, these qualities of mind. It's also useful to know that one of the stories about the origins of metta practice is that it was a practice originally given to the Buddha's disciples to practice with fear. And there's, it's not what we naturally think of, but just good to know that, a practice for fear. So I would love to do just a short guided practice to get us in touch with what that practice feels like to do, and then come back and talk about some of the hindrances that can be useful. So here's my practice challenge at the moment, is to try to do a lightning round of loving kindness practice. If I should refer to it that way, but try to do a little tiny sampler to get us in touch. And I suppose it would be good to be able to do a lightning round of metta wherever we go, right? So I invite you now to just find a comfortable sitting posture. Maybe adjust how you're sitting. This will be maybe, I'm guessing, about 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. So just coming into a seated, comfortable posture. Taking just a moment here to settle into the breath and into the body. Taking a moment just to be present, settling into practice right now, settling into this time, this space. So I'll begin by inviting you to direct metta inward toward the self, loving kindness, boundless compassion inward towards the self. And it can be helpful to bring to mind a time when you felt most supported, most at ease. Bringing this to mind as completely as you can, getting this felt sense of ease. Picturing exactly what you're doing when you have this feeling of relaxation. So I'll offer some phrases for metta. Feel free to modify them, shorten them, however feels right for you. So with this image of ourselves in mind, this felt sense of ease, we begin offering metta. May I be free from fear and anxiety. May I be at ease. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from fear and anxiety. May I be at ease. May I be well. May I be happy. Next, I invite you to expand this field of metta to include a good friend or a family member, someone for whom it is easy to offer metta, someone relatively uncomplicated. And as you think of this person, bringing them to mind as completely as possible. So with this good friend or family member held in mind, we begin offering loving kindness. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be at ease. May you be well. May you be happy. Continuing now, I invite you to expand this field of loving kindness outward again, this time to include a neutral person, an acquaintance, or someone you encounter at the store in your neighborhood you don't know particularly well, someone for whom you have neither a positive or a negative charge. It can be challenging sometimes to find a neutral person. But with this acquaintance, this neighbor, perhaps a coworker, this neutral person held in mind as best we can, we begin offering metta. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be at ease. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be at ease. May you be well. May you be happy. Expanding this field of loving kindness again. This time I invite you to bring to mind a difficult person, someone in your life who is challenging. Acknowledging that this person too is also suffering. So with a difficult person held in mind, we begin offering metta. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be at ease. May you be well. May you be happy. Finally, I invite you to expand this field of loving kindness outward quite a ways. This time to include the people in your neighborhood, in our state, in this country, around the globe. All the many beings who may be in need of compassion, kindness, who are in distress. Also including all the animals, all the plants, all living things. May all beings be free from fear and anxiety. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. So we'll come back together. If your eyes have been closed, slowly opening the eyes, coming back. Very nice to share the practice with you. Take a moment to pause and do that. As I said at the beginning, it's not a straight line to cultivate this unconditional love, this compassion flowing outward. It's an effort that we come back to, that we aspire to. And sometimes it's easier than others. So as I was preparing, I was making notes to myself about the obstacles I've encountered along the way. And I'm happy to share some of those, but I am also curious if others have encountered any obstacles, and if you have any thoughts about that. I could maybe start to get us going, unless somebody's got something they want to share. I'll share a couple to get us started here. One I kind of hinted at the beginning, and this applies to our regular shikantaza and zazen practice too, is wondering if I am doing it right. Am I doing it right? And thinking I should be feeling a particular way. Again, that feeling that seems like others know what's happening here when I first started, especially when I went on a Metta retreat. I don't know if anybody else has had that random thought about what's happening here. One thing that really makes a big difference, even when there's some uncertainty or distraction, is that our intention, our sincere intention, goes a long way in this. I was reading some commentary about the practice from a Vipassana teacher, Guy Armstrong, and I like how he put it. He said, intention is the karmic engine of the practice. So our energy, our intention, our sincerity, oftentimes on Mondays I give the instruction, all that is needed is our sincere effort. So that is our karmic intention, our karmic energy, just that sincerity, even when it may feel a little uncertain, all of those things. And I think that's true of many realms of practice. So I have more, but I am curious to know if what people experienced this evening, and if anybody has worked with obstacles and what has come out of that.
And the common one with all meditation here for me is, of course, drowsiness. But Metta specifically, finding a good image and settling on a target are my hardest.
Yes, and drowsiness, especially later in the evening, can be a challenge, and also that can be just a time to really check in with yourself about what is needed, what is really needed. sometimes we really do need to allow ourselves to drift off because we really need sleep, and there's a lot of self-compassion in that. Other times it's kind of this balancing act, at least for me, um, of then sometimes adding some energy and vigor to my practice when that is the thing that is needed. So it is kind of the middle way. Um, how have you, Dixie, what have you found that's been helpful with the drowsiness? How have you worked with it?
Mostly I try to stay as present as possible, to try to remember that I'm here and that I'm awake, because I can't help but slip in and out, but I can try to remember who I am.
Yeah. I love how you put that. And what you're describing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it just sounds so gentle. Like I just kind of remember to come back without a lot of extra, without a lot of um, charge in that. So, um, and I'm curious to know if anybody else has had with the visualization part, like bringing someone to mind. I have also had that where it's almost like I can spend the whole like slot that we're for that person just jumping around like, well, are they a good friend? I'm not really sure. Like, is that do I have a positive or negative charge? And so it's I forget who was leading it, but I remember there was sort of kind of a tough love person guiding Metta that was just like, just in the ballpark of a good friend, or, like don't spend too much time, trying to decide, because I can definitely start churning on the deciding. I don't know if anybody else has had that feeling.
Sometimes I find myself going, May, Mom, Charles, Glenn, Nit, the list.
The list, yeah, you got your peeps. I'm curious if has anybody found themselves kind of like, I almost imagine like a stone skipping across the lake, trying to like just find my person. Um,
I think for me, then finding a neutral person for whom there genuinely feels like there's no positive or negative charge. That was hard. Like when we first started doing it when you first started offering it on Monday nights, it was hard to find someone. And I started, the way I worked with it was I just started like reviewing who I'd seen that day,
mm,
which of course got easier once we were actually leaving our homes. But it actually helped me kind of do that recollection process of like, oh, what did I do today? Like, who did I encounter? Who um, was I pleasant? Was I distant? Like, just that kind of piece. So I like the neutral, but lately the neutral piece has been my favorite because it helps me with that sort of reflecting on the day.
yeah. Thanks for that, Camille. That's kind of a nice coming together of those two things. I hadn't thought of that. That's great. Um, Anybody else have any thoughts about that?
I fudge the neutral person all the time.
And can you say a little bit more? Do you just choose? Do you
Well,
leave
I don't
ahead?
even. Okay, I know 3 or 4 checkers at the market I go to every week, and uh, it's hard to say that I'm neutral toward any one of them, or the postmaster, or the, you know. Uh, then there's the guy I know who is flying the flag of protest on the opposite side of my own political view, but he's a nice guy. He's just wrong. He's causing trouble for all of us, the world. but so no, I'm not neutral much. I think now that you mention it, I'm going to have to work on that.
Well, and part of that, I mean, there's so many things to work with when we begin to offer it to various people and what the layers are. But part of the intention behind that neutral practice is just getting that practice of expanding and offering this unconditional, boundless compassion to people that we'll never know, that we'll never talk to, that we don't know their story.
Yeah.
And for me, I've been working with that a little bit more lately in terms of bringing this attitude, like what is it to bring an attitude of unconditional love to every person in every situation that I'm encountering? Like, what is that? And the neutral practice somehow has been this little wedge and doorway into considering holding that as a question of like what would that be like for all beings everywhere. Somehow that's been helpful for me to find a way into that. I'm wondering, so I have my list going here. Another obstacle, especially when you get to offering for the difficult or challenging person, feeling blocked, just feeling really blocked with that. I'm guessing others have had some challenges with a difficult person. Yes, no, am I the only one?
So I have a problem. I mean, I just probably the meta practice sometimes works really magically well, and other times I just I overthink all of the people. So the only one that I can really offer unconditional, heartfelt metta to is my cat. That's as far as I can get when I try to offer, other times it's like everything I see, I love, sometimes I'm in love with the world, but oftentimes every single part of it trips me up. The words fear and anxiety, I can't get past those. They just trigger me. Then, offering metta to myself, and I'll get all lost in that. I don't have a self, blah, blah, blah. Offering metta to the close friend or relative. Well, all of the ones I think of, then I feel guilty for not thinking of the other ones. Oh, I forgot my sister. She really needs my metta. Then the neutral person, same as it is difficult. And the challenging person, I oftentimes get lost in that story, why they're challenging, and how I've perpetuated, but blah blah blah. So they're challenging because there's all this complicated stories around them. So the way that I work with all that is just go back to my cat. Even my dog is too complicated for me a lot of the time. so
And I didn't bring this up because there's just lots of ways to be with this. And one, I love what you brought up is like, well, sometimes if it feels too complicated, I just go back to my cat, and finding that space where we can be grounded in that, and then we expand out again. And part of why I wanted to bring up the challenges with the difficult person is because I didn't give it in the instructions tonight, but if it's too triggering or too distracting, it just may not be the right practice right then. It's okay to shift the practice towards the self or wherever we can touch that space and come back to it. Jack Kornfield gives some really just such kind, gentle instruction about like, you'll come back to that practice. You'll be able to do it, but maybe not tonight. Maybe tonight's not the night to do it. Or the other part, the counter to that is for me, it actually has been helpful to find that place where I'm stretching myself. I stay with the uncomfortableness of it a bit, if I'm not too triggered, and really notice what's there. Notice what's in the body, what's in the emotions, what are the thoughts coming up, as a way of opening up to the possibility of being really able to open that unconditional love to even the difficult, challenging people in my life. And what has opened up for me is some perspective on their suffering at times. And I'm not trying to force that. I'm not trying to analyze it. I'm not trying to, in that moment, I'm not saying why is this person challenging, but just really resting in what is coming up for me in response to bringing this person to mind, just on the felt body level, heart, and just being with that, and then seeing what comes up out of that. So that can be useful, but you can also give yourself permission to say, this is not the right time to do this.
I like to do the difficult person because of the most difficult people are in Washington. And I think, gee, wouldn't it be nice if this difficult person felt loving kindness and compassion and wellness and ease and free of anxiety, if he was just totally loved and cared for and just okay, just the way he was, and didn't have to prove anything or didn't have to, do all the stuff that some of these difficult people do in Washington. So I like surrounding them with lots of love and think, oh, come on, you can do it. You can be really good.
Thank you, Nancy. I love that abiding faith in the Buddha nature of everyone, right? Yeah. The time quickly flies by. I do want to mention a couple of things. With all of the divine abodes in the classical teaching, there is what they call a near enemy and a far enemy. So it's helpful to know like what the opposites are and what can kind of seem close to it, but are really can be offering some challenges. So for Metta, for loving kindness, the far enemy we've already kind of touched on, which is aversion or ill will or hate. So and again, that can come up in relationship to bringing up the difficult person. And as Nancy brought up, I love just like that they have potential for being good and changing and holding out that hope, and also that all beings, even the very ones creating a lot of difficult nationally or just personally, also are suffering, and there's something driving that. The near enemy is desire or greed. So that one I had to kind of think about how that comes up for me. And one of the ways it can kind of sneakily come up is that I am offering, like if I'm bringing up a good friend or family member, there might be a sneaky bit of desire for them to be a particular way that comes up in my thought. Or for example, with a mentor or teacher, sometimes offering loving kindness has brought up thoughts of like there's something that I'm wanting from them, wanting their approval, or I'm wanting their time, or wanting the relationship to be different, very in a subtle way. So noticing that those wishes for, I love you, but I want it to be a little bit different, is sneaking in there. So is there a way that I can let go of that expectation, the desire for it to be just a little bit different than it is? And so that's how it's kind of shows up for me. But I think there's more in that. So that's it's an interesting thing to hold as a question. That desire as a near enemy, is it kind of being disguised as loving kindness. So we have just a couple of minutes. Those are the things that I really want to share. But any other thoughts or anything at all? It is complete for now. um, well, thank you for sharing, and thanks for being here for each other and for the talk and the practice. Very much appreciated. So I will say the closing first. Is make a show. Abiding in this ephemeral world, like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha, all Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita.